Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we're going to talk about the idea, and this is like one of those ideas that I bring up, and it was just common sense some years ago, but now it's like really controversial. The idea of each person doing what they are best at, a commonsensical approach to marriage that has fallen from favor. And this is particularly relevant to couples where the guy works outside the home and the woman is a stay-at-home mom. And I'll talk about that just as soon as I tell you to subscribe. I have about 175 extra subscriber episodes. You could subscribe by clicking on the link in every episode description. For $8.99 a month, you get so many episodes. And the most recent one was Understand Why Your Wife May Take Deaths Harder Than You Expected. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. There's an idea now that if the woman does the majority of the childcare and the housework, even if she's at home, then the guy's being an asshole. And that seems like crazy because she's at home. So, I mean, like, it's like kind of hard to get around, like the fact that she has like a lot more hours at home, you know, so then she should be doing a lot more stuff. But the thing is that when they're school age kids, what happens is that by the time they come home, the guy is almost already coming home. So it's almost like then they're supposed to split everything directly, you know, like right down the middle. But she had all that time when she wasn't working, right? And so therefore, well, here, I'll put it the other way. When I see men who don't work with school-age kids and the woman is the primary breadwinner, it's understood that he's supposed to be doing a lot more stuff in the home. I mean, that's how it is, you know? I mean, because he's not working. And so that used to, of course, be what it was for women too. Like this was what it was. You don't work, so therefore you do more stuff in the house. And he does work. And so then when we divide it up, he's doing what he's good at. He's good at going out of the house and making money. And she's doing what she's good at, which we assume she wouldn't choose unless she was good at it and she liked it. So I'm not talking about a situation where she's ill or, you know, she just was fired or something. I'm talking about a situation where she's opting into being a stay-at-home mom. You would assume that somebody would choose to do that and to leave the money on the table and the satisfaction of potentially having a career and the money, of course, of working. They would do it if they were good at it and they liked it. So if they're good at it and they like it, then why is he doing it? Like, she's not helping with his work, so why is he helping with her work? And now I'm certainly not saying men should not do chores. Of course they should do chores. But again, you know, when she's got a lot more time to do it, one would assume that she's going to do a really good job of staying at home. And some of that is going to be chores or hiring somebody to do chores. And a lot of it is going to be childcare and child shuttling and all of that. So the situation gets difficult when she says that they are supposed to be splitting everything in the house and all of the childcare. And now this is not everybody, but it's more often women who struggle with depression and anxiety, right? Because their bandwidth is very, very small. But instead of maybe doing the deep work to look inward and say, why do I need so much help when I'm home a lot and I have a lot more hours? You know, they say, oh, he's supposed to be doing exactly half because these are his kids and this is his house, right? But it's kind of like, if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense, because if he had 6 hours back in the middle of the day and he did not do more chores than you did, you know, as if you were working and it was reversed, then, you know, you'd probably be upset. So what I see is that it used to be very different in different generations. The woman did what she was good at. The man did what he was good at. I'm not saying those marriages were perfect by any means. Many people were miserable staying together because, you know, they had to. The religion wouldn't let them divorce. Society wouldn't let them divorce. A woman couldn't even get a mortgage. You know, the guy would drink. He would beat her. There's a lot of bad shit happening, obviously. But however, there was not the idea that people should do double labor in the same way as there is now. So what I see now is that she says, well, if I read to one kid, then you should be in the other room reading to the other kid. Because if I'm reading to both kids, then you're not reading to any kids. But like big shit, you know, like on a like wider perspective is like, who cares, you know, because like maybe he needs to rest after his work day. I'm certainly not saying he needs to sit on the couch. Like, I always reference this dude from the Wonder Years, the dad from the Wonder Years, and silently watch TV without engaging with anybody for 3 hours after he comes home. Like, that's totally not what I'm saying. But there seems to be a very, very tit for tat sort of thing, almost a body doubling thing, to like use an ADHD term, where it's thought that we cannot divide and conquer based on our strengths. Instead, we both need to do the exact same thing all the time, or else the guy is wrong. Now, this is obviously not every couple. There's many couples where the guy is in charge of basically kind of what happens, and he is the partner who is more listened to. But increasingly, I see that it is the woman who is the stay-at-home mom that says that he is being subpar by thinking that working is basically important at all. And it should just be perceived as a paycheck. And then the minute that he gets home, he turns to the real work of doing exactly what she does kind of all the time. And so if she's cooking, he's cooking next to her. If she's researching, this is a good one that I see. She's researching things. That researching means you're on your phone. So she's on her phone looking shit up. So then he's doing something in the house. And he better do it well because what she's doing is so important. Now, if she was home though, what many of these guys, because I'll get into who gets into this dynamic in a minute, a lot of these guys don't have the courage to say is, what were you doing all day? Like, why didn't you research it during the day? Now, women who are the primary breadwinner frequently do say that. Not all the time. In many of those cases, it's the same dynamic as I'll say in a second. But I mean, if you got a lot of time, do your researching then, right? Do prep work for dinner then. Do various things then. You cannot, though, if you are anxious and depressed. So who I usually see get into this dynamic is women with anxiety or depression, as I said, who are the avoidant partner. And the man is the pursuing partner. He's the preoccupied attachment partner. She's the avoidant attachment partner. And so basically, he won't say something like, well, what were you doing all day? Even genuinely out of curiosity, because he doesn't want her to have even less sex with him, even less intimacy of any sort, even less emotion, even less engagement, smile at him even less, because she barely seems like she's happy to be there anyway. Because she has avoidant attachment, but that's being even magnified times a million by anxiety and depression that isn't treated. And there's a whole industrial complex of anxiety perpetuating things in women geared toward women. If you're a woman and you go through your Facebook feed, half of the articles you read make you think that you're a shitty mom. Your kids are gonna, hate you. They're not getting their emotions developed right. They're not getting their reading isn't going well. Their socializing isn't going well. So these women are genuinely very anxious. They're usually depressed. I see a lot of anxiety and depression stay-at-home moms to the point that I even wrote an article when staying at home with kids worsens depression. And that isn't just when the kids are in the house, because I'll tell you a common etiology of this. The woman was a stay-at-home mom with small kids. Then the kids go back to school, but she's always been kind of low self-esteem and anxious, and that got worse after postpartum. She probably had postpartum anxiety or depression. So she never went back, to work ever. And she had the little kids, they went to school, and then she said, and I have podcasts about this, well, I can't work because they're going to get sick, or I can't work because I only have 6 hours a day, or I can't work because of this or that, or because I won't have the summers off with them, right? But it's really because she's anxious. That's a large part of it, is because she's anxious and she's depressed. Postpartum never fully got resolved, and she just feels like she has low bandwidth all the time. So then the kids get home. The couple of hours when they're there are very high stress for her because she has to be on and engaged, and that's tough. And then he gets home. And so then instead of saying basically, because she doesn't really know it, she's not aware of it, I am anxious and depressed and very low bandwidth, so I need you to rescue me basically right now. Instead, because she's not conscious of that, she uses this like sociological umbrella, which is, we both have to be doing exactly the same thing with the kids, where instead of saying you did what you were good at, you did what provided for our family in one way, working, and now I am going to do my thing that I chose, which is staying at home and therefore being more of a primary caretaker, the one who gets dinner out, the one who, does the laundry, this, that, the other. So instead, she feels very overwhelmed. I've talked a lot about how atypical depression is the type of depression in women. You can go to my podcast and post about that. It makes you very tired. So basically, she's just very, very tired, and she is emotionally worn out. Even though she did whatever she wanted during the day, she still felt anxious about the laundry or about the groceries or about the, what dinner's going to be, or whatever. And so she doesn't know why she's so tired. It doesn't really make logical sense. She did ostensibly, quote, choose to be a stay-at-home mom. But the point is she didn't really choose. She didn't have the fortitude emotionally to deal with the question of, why am I so scared about the idea of going back to work in any capacity or volunteering or like anything? Sometimes low-level volunteering happens a couple of days, here and there. But so she didn't want to say, I think I'm anxious or depressed, and she probably didn't even know. Because after all, with atypical depression, you're still happy to see the children, you're happy on vacations, you can release dopamine. It's just that you go back down to this kind of tired, it's called leaden paralysis, where you feel like you can't get off the couch. So if this resonates with you and you feel like, what's even going on here, and why does she, as the man, you might say, why does she act like we have to always do the exact same thing at the exact same time? And she's talking about emotional labor, mental load. If she's doing the laundry, I got to do the laundry. If she's cooking, I got to cook. And sometimes I cook and I do the laundry and she just sits there and, quote, researches stuff. I'm telling you why. Because likely she has undiagnosed depression or anxiety, and things seem very, very overwhelming to her, and she finds it very difficult to deal with the noise and the stress of the children. But she can't exactly say that outright because she's scared about the alternative, which is not being a stay-at-home mom and then going back to work. That also seems very scary. So instead, it's kind of like you gotta do the same thing that she's doing because she can't really do it alone, but she doesn't really know why. So then it makes sense to frame it like it's some sort of an ethical or sociological thing. But the reality is that people ideally would be, trying to split obligations in the home such that they could enjoy themselves later and have some free time. Because something very classic with this dynamic is that despite being alone while the kids are at school, this woman also feels like she has no time to herself. And this is perplexing to the point of real irritation many times to the men. Because they're like, why? How could you have no time to yourself? And she's like, well, I had to go to the grocery. And then I had a doctor's appointment. And then by the time I did that, I had to do some forms for the kids, and then they're home. And so now we have to both do X and Y and Z for the children. And he's thinking, if I had 6 hours a day, I could have knocked all that shit out. And somebody who's not anxious and not depressed is 100% can do that. Can knock all that stuff out, but she can't. So if you feel like you are the woman and you're listening to this and you're like, this sounds like me. I do feel overwhelmed all the time. I do kind of make him do exactly what I'm doing at the same time that I'm doing it, because otherwise I can't get kind of motivated to do it. And I'm kind of anxious being alone with the kids, and I'm kind of anxious doing the stuff like that is kind of part of this stay-at-home mom caretaker role that I opted into. Well, then it's possible that you have anxiety or depression. And if you remember your mother, your father, either or, being kind of negative and down and difficult and irritable, then it probably runs in your family too. This could be a very life-changing episode, to the people that will open their mind to it. So when two people have to be involved in every bedtime, bath time, dinner time, and they're not having any fun at all, yeah, sure, if you have a quality time love language and you all like doing family reading, cool, awesome. I'm glad for you. That's a great outcome. However, that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is all the couples that it's like the baton death march to get through bedtime, but yet somehow nobody can ever opt out of it because both parents, including the one that was at work for 8 hours, are shackled to it because God forbid anybody could ever say, oh, you like reading them books and I don't, Okay, cool. Oh, you like throwing the ball and I don't. That one's okay, by the way. For the man to add in other stuff is generally considered great. He obviously adds in work. He often adds in exercise, and then he does whatever sports or outdoor stuff or finances or whatever else he does that she doesn't do. But for her to do something specifically alone, like, for her to do bath time alone, that's thought that, like, why is he making her do that extra work? For her to do the Christmas cards, this big example of emotional labor, it's like, why is he making her do this extra work? But if you do have a lot of what a reasonable person would call time to yourself, and you still feel very, very overwhelmed, then anxiety or depression may be at play. And that is all, folks, and I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you got something out of it. And again, if you do recognize yourself in this dynamic or any of the things that I talk about, you could always reach out to me. Anybody else in my practice, bestlifebehavioralhealth.com, and work with a therapist or a coach. And if you individually are like, wow, this is me, but I could never get my spouse to admit it, well, I have podcasts on how to convince your spouse to go to couples counseling, where hopefully the therapist would be like, wait, what's the dynamic? This doesn't make sense. What's going on? And ask questions that maybe bring your spouse to say, why do I feel so overwhelmed all the time? And I'm not saying the man is like totally not, that he's like a perfect person and that he doesn't act passive aggressive or irritated or whatever. But what I'm talking about is a feeling of complete overwhelm that you feel needs to be addressed by the spouse who was working outside the home, doing exactly the same thing with you almost in lockstep, if not more, during the evenings. That doesn't seem to me to be a fair division of labor, despite that's what's ironically being espoused as the reason for the guy doing all the stuff. All right, I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.